In times like these, in times like those, what will be, and so it goes.
Hey, Michael Tyrrell here, coming at you from Olympia, the capital of Washington State, and I'm sitting in front of the Dancing Goat Coffee House this morning, and I want to talk to you a little bit about proximity versus perspective. Proximity, the best definition I know of, is how close one object is to another. Perspective is what you believe or what you think. Now, when you look in the rearview mirror or in the side mirror of your car, there's probably a statement there that says, objects in the mirror may be closer than they appear, and that's there for a good reason. Because if you've noticed, car accidents or skid marks on the dividers and highways didn't come from good perspective, right? They came from actual proximity. And sometimes that's how our life is. We think that we're in a certain place and actually we're somewhere else. There's a term called fractal or fractal edge. Fractal, basically, an easy explanation of that is if you were looking at something that was far too big for you to be able to see with your eye, and you homed in on just a little bit of that thing, and you went to the edge of it, that would be the fractal edge. So in essence, you could be looking at a universe, but only be superimposed on one little teeny part of that universe. In the same way, we talk about the word horizon, or where basically the appearance of sky meets earth, or that line off in the distance, which is the end of your vision. Now, whether or not it's actual, when I was in Israel, it appeared to me on the road we were on that the Mediterranean Sea was above my head, but of course that's impossible, or I would have drowned. What I want to do is help you think about your life, about your thoughts, about your perspective about life. Your perspective is about God. What if you were so close to God that you were only seeing a teeny little part of, maybe you were just superimposed on one fiber of His being. But yet at the same time, you could say that same God that was that close to you didn't exist. For example, Emmanuel is a word which means God with us. But if maybe He was so close to you that you couldn't see Him. That's how Jesus was. Pre-concession Israel, the Messiah was with them. He was there in their presence, but they couldn't see Him. They had a different perspective of who He was, so they missed the entire point. Horizontal thinking can bring depression into your life. I meet people all the time on the road like I am today. You're in downtown areas and you see people mumbling to themselves and talking to themselves, and they're miserable because their perspective is askew. They think that their life is always going to be a certain way. They think that in their horizon, in their horizontal view of life, it's always going to be bad. Nothing good is ever going to happen to them. But proximity is a view of a life from another perspective. Perfect example. Let's say, for instance, that my perspective of life is that I was doomed to be a hopeless drug addict for the rest of my life. But the reality of that was that God was so close to me that I just had to open my eyes and find Him. And His horizon is so much greater than mine. He already knew who I was going to be. I thought I knew who I was going to be. Every day of your life, you can go through life and you can just say, someday when I become this, or someday when I get that, or someday when my house is paid off, or someday when my car is paid off, or someday when I meet the perfect person, I meet the right guy, I meet the right girl, I'm in the right environment, then everything's going to be great. But what you're doing is you're wasting your whole life with horizontal thinking. There's a lot of people that say that the way to do things is to dream big. But if your big dream is off in the horizon of your thinking, what do you do with every day until you reach that horizon? What happens to a life that's being clicked off and wasted? And every moment of the day you're thinking, I can't wait until this happens. I can't wait until that happens. Years ago, I was in between jobs and my wife and I had moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And I went everywhere. Every time I saw help wanted signs, I went in there to apply. And every time it was the same story. I'm sorry, sir, you're overqualified. You're overqualified. You're overqualified. So my perspective is, we're never going to be able to live in this town. We're never going to thrive in this town because I can't even get a job. So after weeks of looking for a job, I went into the church that we attended to meet with one of the elders of the church named Charlie Green. And when I sat down in his office, I told him the whole story. I told him about how I had moved here and I had great expectations, and my perspective was that I would do well and become famous and succeed in Nashville, but I couldn't even get a job. And he didn't say a word for a moment. Then he looked in my eyes and he said, "Son, when you're in the valley, farm it." Those words exploded inside of my spirit. And suddenly I'm realizing the truth of that is that when you're in a valley, you have two choices. You can either take what you have, what's in your hand today, and you can plant for tomorrow, and you can invest in the soil of where you're standing, or you can still dream for the mountaintop and get in the fetal position and complain and be miserable where you are today. But what this precious man was saying ended up changing my life. What he said was, listen, I know what you're looking at, but you're not there yet. Here's where you are, and where you are today is fertile ground if you have eyes to see it. Where you are today, my friend, is fertile ground if you have eyes to see it. And then he said this, he said, we've been watching you. You never know who's watching you. You're surrounded by a cloud of witnesses every day. There's people all around you in the marketplace, in the grocery store, in the local mall. They're watching your life. People are watching you. These people were watching me to see how I would deal with not getting what I want when I want it. Disappointment, disenfranchisement, frustration. And here's the payoff. What he said was, we've been watching you, and we'd always planned on hiring you here at the church, putting you on staff. And he said, so my recommendation to you is stop beating your head against the wall in your perspective of trying to get employment in all these places, and go home and get on your face and read your Bible and begin to pray, because we're going to put you on staff here at the church. So the job was already there. My perspective was faulty. I was trying to do something that was already done, because instead of proximity, knowing my closeness to God's horizon, I was too busy being miserable because I felt a million miles away from my own. Where are you today? Are you like David in the Bible, who was anointed the king of Israel while he was a shepherd boy? Is that where you are today? And is there a long period of time between the place that you first heard who you are and actually the becoming of that person? Have you wanted to give up 1,000 times? Have you fallen into depression today because you're not where you want to be? Well, if I can bring you any encouragement today, let me tell you this. God is with you. Emmanuel is with you right now. You're just so close to him, you can't see him. You can't see the forest for the trees. And that's what's so awesome about God, is that he stands right there in front of you, so close that it's a fractal image. You'd have to back up 1,000 miles just to begin to see the smallest part of God. Oh, but he's there. I love it when I meet people that are atheists and agnostics, and they tell me all the reasons why they don't believe that God is, or that they're God. I love that. I'm not offended by that at all. I understand that. Because if your perspective is all you see is you, then you must be God. Another wise man told me once, the thing that you think about the most is your God. But why don't you open the lens? I'm staring at one right now to look at you. I'm looking through a lens to look into your lens right now to tell you, you need to open your lens a little bit. Your perspective is all jacked up. Because the truth of it is that the creator of heaven and earth, the lover of your soul, is right in front of your eyes right now, but he's so close and so pressed up against you that you can't see him. Friend, today I'm telling you, from somebody that's had the experience of believing that everything in life was like the sword of Damocles hanging over me, and I was always waiting for the other shoe to fall, because my perspective of my life was misery and frustration and depression. And then I backed up a little bit, and my horizon became much broader when I realized that there was a horizon. God's horizon is his Son, Jesus Christ. And in him, everything is possible. He will change your perspective of life, because he is life. So I want you to think today, in the next few minutes, maybe you're somewhere driving or Maybe you're all alone in a room. Maybe you're weeping and thinking about your life. And maybe there's someone watching today and you're actually even thinking about taking your life. Maybe now I've added that one little element that's going to make you think twice about taking something that's much more precious than you'd ever realized because of faulty perspective. So today I'm going to challenge you. Get beyond your horizon. Go much deeper today. Do what I did and realize that in the scheme of things, in the scope of humanity, we're just a drop of water in an entire ocean. We're just a grain of sand in the Sahara. We're such a little teeny part. And yet the God of all creation is right with us today. Open your eyes today and realize things might not be as they appear. That proximity always trumps perspective. So again, this is Michael Tyrrell talking to you from beautiful Olympia, Washington, and praying today that proximity will be the closeness of you with God, Emmanuel. Have a great day.
In times like these, in times like those, what will be, will be, and so it goes. We'll always be laughing, crying, burning down, boys and girls with hearts that break, living, grow, recreate, and raise and nurture for the future time.